So today, a video about dry fasting and the complete reset of the organism, the complete cleansing roof seen from the perspective of science. So we're relying on a study that I'll put below the link, which was published by Walter Longo, the famous fasting researcher, and then Mark Mattson, another fasting researcher. So there are a few that exist. And there you have it. They are known in the fields of aging, brain metabolism, and the cellular mechanisms of fasting. So there you have it. I'm sharing this study with you, and then we'll talk a little bit today about what the science of fasting reveals to us about these things regarding detox, inflammation, regeneration, etc. There you go. So the title of the study is, therefore, Fasting Mechanism, Molecular, Clinical Application, according to these doctors. So this study shows that fasting is not just food deprivation. It's not simply, this will bring benefits, but they are focused on what will trigger it. Physiologically, the state of fasting. So in broad terms, this study showed a decrease in glucose. A decrease in insulin and activation of lipolysis. This study will show that fasting will produce ketone bodies. It will induce autophagy. It will reduce inflammation. It will improve resistance to cellular stress. It will send signals related to aging and degenerative or even chronic diseases. And then these authors explain in this study that there are adaptive responses of the body, that fasting will reduce oxidative stress, so we oxidize with. The more stress we experience in modern life, the worse our diet becomes, the more we have complicated living conditions, the more we oxidize, the faster we age, the faster we accelerate the end of our lives. And then these researchers will show that fasting will have a favorable state on oxidative stress. It will optimize energy metabolism and will protect the cell. It's important to understand that. So fasting isn't simply a break from food. It goes well with beyond that. Of course, this video will only show one aspect. It supports the science. But all the benefits will be explained in a complete general way. We have never seen a study that demonstrates all the benefits at every level across all possible markers and all emotional factors. Depressed, anxious, etc. As for whether it will improve psychologically, no, there is no study that will prove that. But now we have studies showing that fasting will give a metabolic signal. Nervous, cellular, physiological, complete. We'll make the connection, of course, with dry fasting because they're just focused on calorie restriction, but they haven't looked at if we deprive the water, when we know that we are depriving the water, we still have additional adaptations that will be grafted on, therefore even more important therapeutic effects. These statements could be extrapolated in this study with even more responses, more adaptations are being made. But even with just food deprivation, we already see things happening. And when we cut off the water, we see even more phenomena that come to intervene. For many years, people in some Eastern European countries, fasting is seen as a form of suffering. In some religions, some tribes, it can be seen as abstinence, something difficult, a deprivation, a restriction. But biologically, fasting is much more complex than that. Furthermore, the human body is completely designed to alternate between states where we are nourished with food, water, etc. And then the nourished state is when we digest, we store insulin. We are in construction, sugar and glucose are used. We activate growth pathways with mTOR, which is a switch which will growth, and then the state of fasting is exactly the opposite. The proteins that he's using at MPK, so this creates a cleansing process. The body no longer receives energy from the outside, so it changes its internal program. And then it will use the available reserves, the fat reserves. It will produce ketone bodies. It will reduce certain growth signals. It will increase its resistance to stress. It will begin to recycle through autophagy of everything that is dysfunctional in the body. So this change of program is at the heart of the power of fasting. It's really this shift, metabolic, which will produce all the benefits, the powerful benefits that we get from fasting. Fasting, I remind you, is the #1 therapeutic tool par excellence. It will create internal changes. It will not only focus on detox, it will reset the entire organism. Today, fasting is much more effective than taking dietary supplements. That of, I don't know, going to have some treatment sessions, any kind will do. There is a measurable, rapid physiological effect that is lost as soon as the fast is broken. This is proven by this video I'm making for you shows benefits that are validated by science. So, the study explains that in humans, after approximately 16 hours of fasting, it depends a bit on what you're doing, but on average 16 hours, blood glucose drops, glycogen reserves begin to be depleted. After 24 hours, they are exhausted. And then the body switches to using fatty acids, which will produce ketone bodies, which will be the energy that will follow. A fast that is 1 week, 2 weeks on water, 3 weeks on water, it doesn't matter. For dry fasting, we keep it under 9 days for safety reasons, so as not to push the limits. Legs. And there you have it, I would say, for some people, we stop at 3 days of dry fasting. We don't go any further. And then afterwards, we have a good recovery, which is correct, which is right. And we have therapeutic effects, which are quite truly measurable and interesting. Fasting forces the body to break free from a permanent dependence on sugar. That's really the key. The best way to get rid of these excessive carbohydrate addictions is to always need sugar, a dessert, chocolate, a biscuit, something sweet at the end of your meal. Dry fasting, if done correctly, will cut that out. But don't be fooled by the claims of our friends in Russia, who continue to consume sugars and sweet flavors that will revive all the mechanisms related to sugar and carbohydrate addiction. That's not my path. That's not my position. I'm in favor of not giving sugary, carbohydrate-rich foods in the mouth after a dry fast. For me, that's really fundamental. And then there are the pathogens too, which love the sugar. For me, it's a mistake to give sugars. And whether things are sweet or carbohydrate-rich, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. Sugar, and that will create habituation. It will recreate addiction. That's not really what we're looking for. We're really trying to get rid of sugar and carbohydrates, or at least reduce them, to have maximum effect. Regarding detox and digestion, we know that carbohydrates will complicate digestion. When you mix a protein and a sugar, it caramelizes, it oxidizes, it accelerates aging. The goal is to reduce carbohydrates. Undergoing a dry fasting program is the best way to get rid of your addictions, these impulses that you have linked to sugar and carbohydrates. That's a complete reset. Today there are people who are truly energized through carbohydrates. It requires meals, snacks, nibbles, sugary drinks, endless compensations. The body no longer has time to empty itself. He no longer has time to recycle, to do autophagy, to clean. It's impossible. He no longer has time to breathe metabolically. Fasting is the best way to create a physiological tipping point for change. Especially during dry fasting, this shift can be felt as a much greater effect than a water fast. because it's not just a matter of stopping the food supply, but also a matter of stopping the water supply. What needs to be said is that we must stay. It is important to be cautious when embarking on a dry fast, because the stress you have put on your body is quite significant, very strong. That's why it's very important to prepare for dry fasting properly. We do some preparation beforehand. There are things you need to know when you start a dry fast to be well prepared when you want to start a fast that will exceed 3 days. It's good to be somewhat informed. We organize spa treatments. We have people who come every year who have incorporated this into their daily routine because they have clearly seen the benefits. But you can also do short dry fasts. That's also interesting, but less so than if you do slightly longer programs, long compared to who you are. Metabolic reset means breaking free from your dependence on carbohydrates and sugar. When the body fasts, it will gradually decrease its dependence on carbohydrates. The liver releases its glycogen reserves. And then, when its reserves are exhausted, it will mobilize the skull. Course tonics are created, and then they will also create signaling molecules. The tonic courses will have an impact on the reduction of inflammation. They will influence the brain, they will influence the mitochondria, which will be cleaned and recycled. And then our perception of hunger is cut off. After 24 to 36 hours of fasting, the sensation of hunger disappears. We are nourished from within our bodies. Beta-hydroxybutyrate is primarily the main fuel used during fasting. It depends on the distance, but after 24-36 hours, this is the fuel that gives us energy. Many fasts bear witness. The benefits of fasting. The mind becomes clearer, becomes more stable. We have energy returning. Very available as soon as the fast is stopped. And when we start eating again, we really benefit from it. In his body, we have a phase deep inner self. You can really feel this reset, this inner rebirth, which is quite profound. In any case, during dry fasting should never be viewed as a performance. This is the kind of talk that's really not worth hearing. We don't care about it for days. It's just an indication. Roughly, we know where we stand. But the real question is, does my body still have enough energy to transform, repair, integrate, recover? That's how you're going to rebuild from there. That's interesting. The key to dry fasting is getting out at the right time when you still have energy reserves. It's not like what you see in some centers. I'm not going to denounce it, but there are people who push you into suffering, especially the first time, by sending you on very, very long dry fasts. That doesn't make sense to me. You must be coming out of a dry fast still with a perfectly acceptable, satisfactory state, and you don't need to get into anything too difficult. You should not end a fast in a state of complete exhaustion and agony. I see some people doing that. That's not our school. What matters? It's about emerging with enough energy left so you can recover properly. A well-conducted dry fast is a functional metabolic cellular reset, and poorly conducted. I made a video showing the mistakes we make. Dry fasts that are too interventionist, too medicalized, with needles, overly vigorous massages, inappropriate stimulation, may see it as an attack. That's not what you're looking for in a fast. You really need to be in a cocoon, in a safe environment where you are not exceeding your adaptive capacity. The support must be done in a way holistic, comprehensive. We must take care of the environment, the person, his emotions, etc. The recycling of the body is called autophagy. It's a name that comes up a lot. It's a bit like the cell sorting things out. What still works is kept. What's damaged is dismantled. What can be used and recovered, that leaves. We recover fabrics. Deconstructed, we create new materials, etc. In this study, the authors point out that fasting stimulates autophageal consumption and alters major metabolic pathways related to stress resistance, to lipolysis and cell protection. This is a really important point. Many people think that detoxing is only about eliminating waste and toxins. But true detox is much more subtle than that. It's not just about eliminating toxins. It's also about physiological reorganization internally. Detox is also about reducing excess inflammation, calming the digestive system, and mobilizing reserves. Allow the overworked liver to recover and regenerate. Allow the tissues to be cleared, the lymphatic system to drain thoroughly. Allowing cells to recycle themselves through autophagy, allowing the nervous system to slow down, to allow the body to escape from the constant metabolic noise, etc. In this perspective, dry fasting is particularly interesting. He will to remove stimulations that are water, outdoor activities and food. The body then enters a state of sobriety. This is not because dry fasting can be deep. It takes a long time to do. That's why we're limiting it. We've put a framework in place. In some retreats, we don't go too far. We don't push people. Because dry fasting is very intense. We try not to push him into significant suffering. Dry fasting is about understanding one's intelligence, see, east. To have an introspective effect is to understand one's own situation. It is a therapy of the living. Why rest? Does food change the terrain? One of the most interesting aspects is measured by inflammation. The authors discuss several situations where fasting appears to reduce inflammatory markers and improve certain areas. They specifically mention effects observed in asthma, rheumatoid arthritis, hypertension, obesity, metabolic syndrome, and certain animal models of chronic diseases. In rheumatoid arthritis, the study notes that long-term fasting of 1 to 3 weeks is beneficial. I would like to remind you that 1 day of dry fasting is roughly equivalent to 3 days of water fasting. Distances are reduced by a factor of 3, time is saved, and it's faster. You don't need to stay in a center for a month or even a week. You get the same result with additional benefits, particularly for detoxification, which is much more important. We will defat the person much faster. And in the case of infectious diseases, water fasting has less effect. It is less interesting. Dry fasting is very effective against infectious agents, whether viruses, parasites, or bacteria, because by drying them out, they can no longer proliferate. We no longer have replication with a dry fast. The example I'm using is COVID. 3 days of dry fasting, and your COVID is sorted, over and done with. You don't need hydroxychloroquine. You don't even need herbs. You don't need clay, etc. Even natural treatments are slower than dry fasting. Dry fasting is the #1 therapy. 1. Regarding COVID, nobody's going to tell you. We had cases, we know it, it works very well. COVID is over, we don't talk about it anymore. All the better, actually. Dry fasting can open certain windows, therapeutic windows, that's fine. To have truly synergistic effects on multiple levels in multiple places. Dry fasting will not work on just one system. It will have an effect complete and comprehensive across all systems, all at the same time. That's the real advantage. The key point about dry fasting is that fasting is not an isolated element. It is a process that we prepare. We look at what we do during this, and especially how we're going to get out of it. And we need to prepare ourselves when we embark on this. Inside. Dry fasting, which accounts for 80% of the success of fasting, is really the phase where we will pay close attention. Very particular, what are we going to do on this outing? The body should not be forced, one must not go too fast, one must not. Don't abandon the mechanisms too drastically. That's why for me, carbohydrates coming out of a dry fast are too fast. They cause insulin to rise too quickly. This is not the best outing. The exit is the beginning of reconstruction. Therefore, insulin, IGF-1, growth factor, and aging are slowed down. Another major point of the study. IGF-1 is a growth factor. It is useful at certain times in life, but when it is too high in certain contexts, it is associated with growth pathways, proliferation pathways, and accelerated aging, certain metabolic risks, or perhaps even cancer. Not a cancer specialist, but when IGF-1 levels are too high. Insulin stimulation all the time. It's not extraordinary. The study explains that fasting for 3 days or more leads to a significant drop in insulin and glucose and a decline in IGF-1, or less growth factor. The authors indicate that 5 days of fasting in humans can cause a drop of more than 50% in IGF-1 and a sharp increase in IGF-BP1, a protein that inhibits the action of IGF-1. This shows that fasting acts as a brake on the permanent signals of growth, a brake on overstimulation, a brake on metabolic hyperactivity. The best way to reduce all of that, it's fasting. In our society, we have too much food, too much sugar, too much screen time, too much stress, too much noise, too much of everything. Fasting will signal that we are slowing down, saving, sorting, protecting, and repairing. We return to the essence of who we are. We return to the essentials. It's really the principle of fasting is this return to oneself, this rest, to a complete break, to reset, to cleanse. The body pushes us into dry fasting, a kind of inner sobriety. We must never get into the radicalization of things that are too harsh, too complicated. The other interesting point is mental clarity, the brain, the BDNF, the neurotrophic factor. One of the passages from the study he is referring to, the authors explain that intermittent fasting can alter brain chemistry and the activity of neural networks. They specifically mention the BDNF, which is important for the synaptic plasticity and neuronal resistance and the production of new neurons in some models. The BDNF is very present in water fasting and dry fasting. Dry fasting is more important. BDNF will support neuronal plasticity, it supports adaptation, it supports the brain's ability to learn, to reorganize, to resist stress. The study also explains that fasting can improve resistance to neuronal stress, reduce certain pro-inflammatory cytokines, and support mechanisms related to nervous system production in models, animals. That's what was shown. This does not mean that dry fasting will cure depression. This does not mean that it replaces treatment from a therapist. But it helps to understand why some people feel during or after a well-conducted fast mental clarity, A feeling of calm, a stable mood, a real sense of returning to oneself, a form of inner peace. Fasting acts on several levels simultaneously. It affects all these mechanisms: metabolic, inflammatory, brain energy, ketone bodies, the autonomic nervous system, the relationship to the body, its relationship to food, its relationship to stress. It will act on all of that at the same time. That's really the strength of fasting. It becomes a very powerful experience for people who feel overwhelmed, anxious, exhausted, scattered, cut off from themselves. Fasting will bring you together. It will reunite you. You will rediscover who you truly are. You will feel its benefits. It's not a magic pill, but it will create a break with things for you. Dangerous and bad, but it will give you a shift in the sense that it will cut out some noise. External factors will disrupt some of your automatic responses. It will disconnect you from your overconsumption. That's fine. Create a break from the daily routine we have with our food system, where we have to consume 3-4 times a day with stimulants, etc. We're finally able to put a stop to all of this. This break is exactly what the nervous system needs to begin to reorganize and regenerate itself. Another key point is metabolic syndrome, the enlarged belly, abdominal fat, inflammation, blood pressure. This study discusses that. Insulin resistance, high triglycerides, hypertension, diabetes. This is a problem that is becoming increasingly important today. If people don't change, we're really heading for an explosion of metabolic diseases in the future. It's not just people who are overweight, it's a metabolically exhausted state. The body can no longer manage sugar and insulin is constantly being used. There is low-grade inflammation that is measured by a CRP level. Ultra-sensitive, you can measure this marker, which is one of the most important for me, because you can see that you oxidize, you ignite quietly. In other words, it's insidious. These are insightful analyses, but they truly see this drift. Where you are, ignited from within, quietly, you have disturbed sleep. The belly that is starting to swell. Abdominal fat is a breeding ground for inflammation and oxidation. It's really not good to have a fat belly. Or this study will discuss all of that. What matters is removing the excess of sugar to eliminate these constant meals. This is part of dry fasting. It's a powerful metabolic reset tool. Deep. If you have people with type 2 diabetes, fasting plus perhaps a suitable diet will really help. An interesting answer. What you need to understand is that when you embark on a fast, you can't go back to your old habits. If you go back to your old habits, all your problems will return. You need to create changes. These can be micro changes, as explained in the treatment programs. But it's really important to be able to create change behind it. Dry fasting requires precise assessment, a framework, monitoring, and preparation. It's really important not to do this haphazardly. The idea is not to tell everyone to do a dry fast and improve their problems. True competence lies in knowing for whom, when, for how long, how, and under what conditions. It really needs to be personalized. Fasting should be tailored to the individual's needs. Dry fasting is known to be more powerful. 1 day of dry fasting is equivalent to 3 days of water fasting. It's faster, we save time, we need less. We save time. 1 week we Took 1 week out of 6 holidays, we owned 4. Overall, it's more interesting. The study will not specify dry fasting because for them it's unknown. They didn't study it by mistake. They should really look into it because there are benefits that could be. Other new benefits have been discovered. But we know from experience that dry fasting works on things. Complete, deeper, we go further. Dry fasting will to go further on the energy side. You no longer have any liquids. He will create electrolyte changes in the body. The heat, you're going to get much hotter. Your kidneys will work differently than during a water fast. Your blood pressure will decrease. You will create metabolic water. You will lose fat along with waste and toxins. And then in addition, energy savings. So, dry fasting is not simply a fasting more intensely. It's a different experience. You're in something else. Internally, it vibrates differently. We experience different things. But it's important to have a framework with activities that are targeted in relation to the group you have. We are dealing with a density experiment that is much more important rather than a mathematical equivalence. What else can be said? Believing that the longer you do a dry fast, the more beneficial it will be. That's often a bit of a wishful thinking thing to do. The study also reiterates a crucial point. Fasting must be adapted to each individual. The authors conclude that fasting approaches have significant potential for health, particularly in overweight or sedentary adults. But I would also like to clarify that fasts lasting more than 24 hours, and particularly those lasting 3 days, must be carried out under the supervision of coaches who are experts in this field. As I said, for up to 3 days you can do a little bit at home, but after that things happen that you don't control. It's good to have advice and groups that make fasting much easier for you. Just because you embark on short fasts doesn't mean it's going to be a magic pill that will cure everything. It really requires supervision, listening. You must consider all these aspects of the person, their condition, their age, her stress level, whether she's taking any medication, the condition of her kidneys and liver, etc. How does the person recover? Do they play sports? It's operation. You need to understand the person in its entirety. In dry fasting, depth is not measured solely in terms of days of dry fasting. It is measured in the quality of adaptation. How are you doing during your fast? Are you calm, clear-headed? How are you behaving? Fasting is a therapy for hormetic stress. Hormesis is the idea that moderate, well-dosed stress can strengthen the body. Sport is stressful, as are cold, heat, and fasting. If the stress is appropriate, the body responds by becoming more resilient. The study explains that fasting triggers adaptive cellular responses that improve the body's capacity to manage greater stress and to counteract certain disease processes. Fasting is not beneficial because it is comfortable. It is beneficial because it imposes a challenge on the body. This challenge must be well measured, fair, and precise in relation to the person we are facing. That's why with protocols we can't say do everything for 5 days, do everything for 7 days, 9 days, 10 days. It's not possible. We have to adapt to the individual. They mustn't exceed their capacity to adapt. For some people it's 2 days, for others it's 3 or 4, we don't know. It's in our daily lives, in the assessments we make. It's on a day-to-day basis that we can measure when to stop fasting. That's the key to understanding. We cannot impose days of fasting, saying everyone will do 9 days to heal. It's absurd. It makes absolutely no sense. It's going to degrade people. We've had accidents. I had appointments with people who had fasted in certain centers, and it didn't go well because we imposed disproportionate distances on them compared to their condition. We lack the subtlety to understand. We haven't observed these people holistically, and this leads to problems. That's not at all what we do. We really try to listen carefully and be able to discuss and exchange ideas with the people in front of us and know when to stop them before they get exhausted so that we can obtain the therapeutic benefits afterwards. Psychological fasting is about truly finding that point, the right time to stop, not to go too far. It's really important to have that. Having a structure is also important. You can fast at home, but a retreat, a well-structured approach offers something different, easier, more relieving. It offers a space away from everyday life, away from work, away from obligations, away from fridges, away from stimulants, away from automation, away from noise, etc. You create this connection with people and you don't have to worry about anything. You are in a cocoon and you let yourself be carried away by the experience, and the fast goes by very quickly. You've gone 10 days, you don't even realize it, it was so fast. Whereas I can assure you that if you're at home, you're definitely counting the hours. When you are in a space with people, you're no longer in the same mindset at all. It's much easier to grasp things. And you are less resistant. You are more in a state of letting go, accepting what happens. There you go. Creating the cocoon and therapeutic space is truly important in the holistic dry fasting we practice. The person does not just become passive, not saying I want to cure this. No, she is active. She participates in workshops, things that are done during treatment. The person comes to lay down one's stories, to rest, to refocus. Observe your body, listen to your mind. Understand your habits, return to breathing. Find a natural rhythm. It's much easier in a group. We are truly in a calm environment, surrounded by nature with human warmth, observation, and security. We have gentle activities, I remind you. They are gentle activities. We must not subject the body to excessively violent things, invasive therapies, which are not good because they are too interventionist. This isn't my school, it's more about medical matters. It's not interesting to give too much intervention because it will disrupt all the intrinsic physiological mechanisms of dry fasting. In the holistic approach, we don't just treat a metabolism, we support a person with their history, their mindset, their fears, their vulnerabilities, etc. That's what holistic medicine is. It's not just about giving someone a protocol. If it's holistic, it happens on its own. It is necessary to listen to all dimensions of the person in a complete and holistic way. One of the keys to health is prevention. Dry fasting is an excellent tool. The study concludes that intermittent or periodic fasting could have significant potential to promote optimal health and reduce the risk of many diseases, chronicles, particularly among overweight and sedentary people. We live in a society who waits for illness to occur before reacting. Fasting is the opposite. We protect, we clean, we restructure, we autophagize, we create cyanogenesis, repair, and we do prevention work. When you do that, the disease can't take hold. If you clean as you go, we regenerate gradually. There are no more surprises. Most people wait until they are sick before they start fasting. It's a bit late, which is a shame. What matters is being able to intervene beforehand, to do prevention. Fasting is the #1 tool in prevention. We like to see people who are in excellent health come to fast because we know they will maintain good health well into old age. Taking care of one's health is important. It's not just about treating illnesses. It's about creating an environment where the disease has less room, a clearer, lighter, less inflammatory environment, more sensitive to insulin, more metabolically mobile, calmer nervously, more conscious. Dry fasting is a powerful tool in this prevention, but only if it's integrated into a holistic lifestyle. That means that when you finish your treatment, you have to make small changes. You can't stay in your old routine because then the problems will come back. It just comes from a dramatic improvement you explain to your friends. I went 10 days without food or water. It's great. Afterwards, if you continue your old habits and that, if you're not going through a process of inner change, all of that is gone. It's for nothing. That's why we like to keep up the rhythm. I have my own rhythm. Every year, I'm doing my treatment. I'm not deviating from it. That's how it is. I'm doing it from the start. Manner. Every year, for almost 10 years now, I've been doing this. We maintain a rhythm. We must abstain. We are trying to hold the rhythm, and then if we've put ourselves through something, it has to come, but we feel it because, as for me, I have a call. It comes at a certain time. In the year, I know I have to go. I need to take a week off, go out, and then focus on my cleaning and get it done. Afterwards, we're glad we did it, and we feel all the benefits that will last for months. They really are. The benefits that are visible immediately after the fast. That's clear. Dry fasting is not for everyone. There are contradictions. You can't just improvise when it comes to dry fasting. That's why it's asking. Follow up. Look at the people we have. For some people, it's unsuitable. That's why I like seeing people for appointments and consultations. We can discuss things. Is it useful for you or not? We observe, we discuss. If the person is cachectic, malnourished with pathologies, or taking medication, this may not be the best approach. You really have to look at all the parameters to be able to say, I think fasting would be advisable. In some centers, in some schools, they take just about anyone. It's all about business. They make you fast when you shouldn't. You really need to look at who you're dealing with. It's really important. The study itself also emphasizes that certain populations, such as children and the elderly, people with pandermal insufficiency, have not been studied for exposure to adverse effects. That's why my message isn't that fasting will cure everything. My point is really that fasting can be a powerful tool for metabolic and physiological cellular reset. A tool for transforming the field when it is well prepared, well supervised, well individualized, and well executed. And then it's not the same thing if fasting is not a promise, it is a possibility for change, for improvement, and that demands respect. In conclusion, fasting is a return to the body's intelligence. He tells us that fasting activates powerful mechanisms of ketogenesis and autophagy. Glucose reduction, decreased insulin, decreased EGF-1, improved insulin sensitivity, reduction of certain inflammatory markers. There are several, I won't go into detail. Role in cell protection, role in stress resistance, potential effect on the brain, therefore BDNF. It will reduce blood pressure, inflammation, and will work on oxidative stress, therefore aging. We have a tool for prevention, for aging, number one, for one's health. Dry fasting must be supervised and adapted to the individual, and also because it is more demanding, more difficult to manage. So dry fasting is really a space for withdrawal, silence, and sobriety, of bodily intelligence, of learning to know oneself from the inside out, and then a powerful means of physiological reset. Digestive issues, nervous system, emotional states, and so on. Performance, dogma, and competition should never be the focus. Dry fasting should never be harsh on your body, and you must also listen to your inner voice. It's very, very, very important. It's the inner voice. When you sense danger, when you sense something that is not good for you, don't insist. You don't say, I saw it in the book. If we don't do it for 5 or 6 days, we get nothing. No, you have to listen to your inner self. Am I going too far? How am I feeling, etc.? It's really your sixth sense that should guide you. That's enough now. Stop. Now I'm going for a good run, etc. That's enough. First time, we don't push ourselves. We stay moderate. This is really important. That's it. That's what secular fasting is all about. It's about knowing how to slow down, observe yourself, respect yourself, create inner security, and have a good outing. We know that it will be rebuilt intelligently afterwards. And there you have it. Perhaps the great lesson of this study is that the body possesses an extraordinary intelligence of adaptation. But this intelligence becomes most apparent when we stop constantly disrupting it with excessive food demands, as we see in society today. And besides, the body doesn't need more. He just needs less food, less sugar, less stimulation. Fasting brings all these reductions, this dry fasting that one brings back to oneself with simplicity. Presence of mind. That's really the message of dry fasting. When it is well supported, it can become a really interesting gateway to deep rest, detox, metabolic reset, and then a gateway to more conscious health, and then really this return to oneself, which for me is the most important. So that was a short video that links this study to dry fasting, and that's it. I wish you a wonderful summer. We're off on our summer dry fasting retreat. We have an international group waiting for us. Now we have people coming from all over the world to our retreats because we are the only ones doing what we call holistic dry fasting, where we have all dimensions of the human being. We have the most advanced type of fasting in terms of performance. This is the one that will physiologically work in the body in the most significant way, and also with holistic support. So there you have it. We have these treatments starting, and then the next treatment will be in Montenegro at the end of September. There are still places available for those interested in Montenegro. That's all for today. See you soon. Bye-bye.